The air in the Sterling Publishing interview room hangs heavy, cold, and unnervingly silent. Sunlight streams through the vast window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air but offering no warmth. Across a polished mahogany table, Eleanor Vance, Ellie, sits rigidly, her hands clenched in her lap, the damp chill of her ruined suit clinging to her skin. Her face burns, a stark contrast to the room's sterile coolness. Opposite her, the arbiters of her fate exchange glances.
Really, Ms. Vance, one expects a certain baseline level of presentation, especially when aspiring to a position at Sterling. This isn't community theater.
Quite. And the lingering aroma of, what is that, turpentine? It hardly screams assistant editor material, does it? More back alley artist than literary aspirant.
Humiliation washes over Ellie, hot and swift. The carefully constructed composure she'd maintained crumbles internally, leaving raw nerves exposed. Each tick of the antique clock on the wall seems to magnify her inadequacy, echoing the disdain in their voices. How had it come to this? How had a day that started with such meticulous hope dissolved into this nightmare of judgment? But just hours before that crushing moment, before the rain, before the scattered sketches and the impossible choice, Ellie Vance's day began like any other crucial day, filled with a potent mixture of anxiety and fierce, unwavering ambition. Let's rewind to where the day truly began, in the quiet pre-dawn light filtering into a small, book-filled apartment far from the imposing glass towers of Midtown. For Eleanor Vance, literature wasn't just a passion, it was a refuge. Growing up in a neighborhood where aspirations were often capped by circumstance, the local library became her second home. She devoured stories, losing herself in worlds crafted by authors whose names she dreamed of one day seeing on the spines of books published by houses like Sterling. Sterling Publishing, the venerable institution, the gold standard, a name whispered with reverence in literary circles. It felt like another universe compared to the community college where she diligently earned her degree, supplementing textbook learning with late nights working service jobs, fueling her dream one dog-eared paperback at a time. This background, this lack of Ivy League polish, was the invisible weight she carried into every hopeful application, every carefully worded cover letter. Adding another layer to the pressure, another thread of deep personal investment, was her mother, Maria Vance. For 15 years, Maria had moved through the hallowed halls of Sterling Publishing not as an editor or an executive, but as part of the cleaning staff. Ellie knew the gleam on those marble floors, the scent of polish in the executive suites, through her mother's tired descriptions at the end of long shifts. The thought of working within the same walls, albeit floors above, fueled Ellie's ambition with an almost painful intensity. To succeed here wasn't just about her own dream, it was about validating her mother's years of quiet, often invisible, labor. It was about bridging the gap between the service entrance and the corner office, a gap that felt miles wide. And then, the email arrived. An interview. Not just any interview, but one for the newly announced assistant editor trainee position under Sterling's fledgling diversity initiative. It felt like a miracle, a crack in the formidable facade of old money publishing. Ellie knew, realistically, it might be a long shot, perhaps even a token gesture by the monolithic company. But it was a chance. Her only tangible chance to get a foot in the door, to prove that passion and intelligence weren't exclusive to a particular pedigree. The weight of this single opportunity settled heavily on her shoulders. This publishing interview wasn't just a step, it felt like the entire staircase. That morning, the anxiety was a live wire beneath her skin. She checked her reflection for the 10th time, smoothing the lapels of her one good interview suit, a careful purchase from a consignment store, chosen for its professional lines, hoping it masked its humble origins. Her portfolio, filled with writing samples and editorial critiques she'd poured her soul into, sat ready by the door. Every detail was planned, every potential question rehearsed in her mind until the words felt smooth, practiced, hopefully masking the tremor of nerves just beneath.
Internal thought, voice slightly tight with nerves, okay, deep breath, Ellie. You know your stuff. Faulkner, Morrison, the contemporary trends. Just be articulate. Professional. Confident. Good morning, Ms. Cromwell, Mr. Davies. Thank you for considering my application. I believe my unique perspective and dedication, no, too stiff. Just, be yourself? Can I yourself compete with Yale and Princeton? Just get through the door. Make mom proud. Show them.
She gathered her things, the weight of her dreams and the anxiety of the moment pressing down equally. A final glance around the small apartment, filled with more books than furniture, a testament to her lifelong love affair with the written word. She opened the door, stepping out into the burgeoning hum of the New York City morning. Hope wrestled with apprehension as she began the journey downtown, utterly unaware that the city, in its chaotic, indifferent way, was about to present her with a test far more profound than any question Miss Cromwell or Mr. Davies could ever devise. The day was young, the possibilities felt vast, and the imposing silhouette of Sterling Tower beckoned on the horizon. As the apartment door clicked shut behind her, Eleanor Vance took a steadying breath, the city air already thick with the promise of a busy Tuesday. The weight of her portfolio, containing not just paper but years of curated hope and relentless effort, felt both heavy and grounding in her hand. The first leg of her commute involved the familiar rhythm of the subway, a descent into the echoing tunnels that served as New York's great equalizer, yet somehow also magnified the distances between worlds. Down here, amidst the diverse tapestry of faces, tired commuters, students plugged into music, tourists wide-eyed, Ellie felt anonymous, just another striving soul heading towards Manhattan's indifferent heart. The screech of the train wheels against the track was a jarring soundtrack to the polished interview answers scrolling through her mind.
Internal thought, focused but tense, Sterling's mission emphasizes groundbreaking voices. My analysis of emerging poets fits that. Remember the points about narrative disruption in contemporary fiction. Okay. Why Sterling? Because of its legacy, its commitment to quality? No, too generic. Its commitment to fostering enduring literary conversations. Yes. And my passion for literature aligns perfectly with that vision. Do I sound convincing? Or just desperate? Focus, Ellie. It's about the words. Always the words.
She shifted uncomfortably on the hard plastic seat, acutely aware of the suit she wore. It was charcoal gray, impeccably clean, pressed to within an inch of its life the night before. A thrift store find, chosen after weeks of searching for something that looked expensive without actually being expensive. Did it pass muster? Or did it scream trying too hard? This constant internal negotiation, this imposter syndrome whispered insidious doubts. It was a familiar battle, fought every time she dared to step towards the world embodied by the gleaming towers fast approaching above ground. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her portfolio. Inside lay her analysis of recent acquisitions by Sterling's competitors, her thoughts on untapped markets, proof, she hoped, that her insights transcended her zip code and her community college transcript. As the train rattled through a dark patch between stations, she quickly dialed her mother's number, wanting to hear her voice before emerging into the fray.
Voice warm, slightly accented, background noise of early morning routines. Ellie? Nija, you on your way?
Hi, Mom. Yeah, just on the train now. Wanted to call before I lost service.
Okay, good luck, my heart. Remember everything you know. You are smart, Eleanor. Smarter than all of them. Just show them. Be yourself. Your best self.
Thanks, Mom. I will. I hope I make you proud today.
You always make me proud, Ellie. Always. Now go get them. Call me right after, okay?
Okay. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
The call ended just as the train screeched into the bustling Grand Central Terminal. Emerging into the cavernous main concourse, Ellie felt the shift immediately. The air changed, charged with a different kind of energy, the focused, hurried pace of Midtown Manhattan. She joined the river of people flowing towards the exits, her own reflection catching momentarily in the polished brass of a doorway, nervous eyes staring back from beneath carefully applied, understated makeup. Outside, the city assaulted the senses. The sheer scale of the buildings, canyons of glass and steel scraping the sky. The cacophony of horns, sirens, and snippets of a dozen languages. The palpable thrum of commerce and power. Here, the contrast between her world and the one she aspired to join was stark, almost overwhelming. Professionals in exquisitely tailored suits strode past with an air of effortless belonging, their leather briefcases clicking against the pavement, their conversations punctuated by easy laughter. Ellie smoothed down her own suit jacket, suddenly feeling the inexpensive fabric like a brand.
Internal thought, steeling herself, okay. Different world, same goal. They put their bespoke trousers on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. Probably. Focus on the interview preparation. Remember your analysis of Finch's early poetry acquisitions, that shows historical knowledge. Connect it to the diversity initiative, demonstrates strategic thinking. You've earned this shot. You belong here as much as anyone. Almost.
With each block closer to Sterling Tower, the anticipation built into a physical pressure behind her ribs. The building itself began to dominate the skyline ahead, an elegant monolith of dark glass and steel, whispering prestige and literary history. This was it. The nerve center of the publishing world she'd only read about, the place where careers were made, where words were transformed into cultural touchstones. Her steps quickened, fueled by a mix of excitement and sheer terror. She could almost feel the judgmental eyes of the interviewers already, dissecting her background, her clothes, her very presence. She rehearsed her greeting one last time in her head, aiming for a tone that was respectful but not deferential, confident but not arrogant. The final corner turned, and there it stood, Sterling Tower, filling her entire field of vision, immense and intimidating. She paused, took one final, deep breath, clutching her portfolio like a shield. And just as she prepared to take that final step towards the entrance, towards her future, the sky above seemed to hold its breath too, darkening abruptly as the first fat drops of rain began to splatter against the pavement at her feet. The city, it seemed, had one more challenge to throw her way before she even reached the door. The darkening sky kept its promise with shocking speed. Those first few drops Ellie felt were merely the overture. The main performance began without warning, a sudden, torrential rainstorm unleashing itself upon Manhattan. It wasn't just rain, it was a vertical wall of water, hitting the pavement with a roar that swallowed the traffic noise. People yelped, cursed, and scrambled for cover, umbrellas instantly proving inadequate against the deluge, some inverting with sharp, defeated pops. The sidewalk became a chaotic ballet of hurried dashes and desperate huddles under shrinking awnings. Ellie, caught just yards from the imposing entrance of Sterling Tower, instinctively pulled her portfolio tighter against her chest, her carefully pressed suit darkening rapidly as the rain soaked through in seconds. And it was then, amidst the sudden chaos, that she saw him. Underneath a nearby boutique's inadequate striped awning, looking thoroughly out of place, stood an older man. He was dressed in clothes that might have once been respectable but now looked rumpled and faintly stained with what looked like paint or charcoal. A scruffy gray beard framed a face etched with lines that spoke of weariness, but his eyes, sharp and startlingly blue, scanned the panicked crowd with an unnerving intensity. He clutched a large, battered black portfolio, the kind artists use, protectively against the wind and rain, looking less like a victim of the storm and more like a detached observer caught in its midst. He was, in essence, the picture of a struggling street artist, perhaps trying to sell sketches to tourists before the heavens opened. Just as Ellie registered his presence, disaster struck him. A sudden, vicious gust of wind tore through the street canyon, whipping rain sideways. A frantic businessman, head down, umbrella deployed like a battering ram, jostled the older man hard. The artist stumbled, his grip faltering on the worn portfolio. With a sickening sound of tearing cardboard and protesting metal clasps, the portfolio flew from his grasp, hitting the wet pavement and bursting open. A cascade of papers, sketches, charcoal drawings, maybe watercolor studies, scattered instantly, caught by the wind and plastered against the slick, grimy sidewalk, immediately soaking through.
Gasps internally, oh, no. His work.
The artist let out a cry of pure anguish, a sound nearly lost in the storm's roar. He lunged, trying desperately to gather the escaping sheets, but the wind played cruel games, sending pages skittering into puddles and towards the gutter. Around them, the frantic rhythm of the city didn't pause. People sidestepped the mess, some muttering annoyance at the obstruction, others casting fleeting, indifferent glances before hurrying on, heads bowed against the rain. No one stopped. No one offered to help. Ellie froze for a half-second, her mind racing. Sterling Tower loomed, impossibly close yet suddenly worlds away. The interview. Her one chance. Her suit, already damp, would be ruined. Her carefully styled hair was already plastered to her forehead. She glanced at her watch, the minutes were bleeding away, precious minutes ticking closer to the most important appointment of her life. But then she looked back at the man, now on his hands and knees, frantically trying to salvage his waterlogged art, his shoulders slumped in defeat against the relentless downpour. The image struck a chord deep within her, overriding the panic and the ambition.
Internal thought, sharp intake of breath, I can't just walk past. That's everything to him. The interview, but... oh, hell.
Decision made. Sacrifice accepted. Ellie darted forward, dropping her own precious portfolio onto a slightly drier patch near the wall.
Sir. Let me help you.
She knelt beside the disguised Alistair Finch on the cold, wet pavement, ignoring the immediate seep of icy water through the fabric of her suit trousers. Her fingers, quickly becoming numb, fumbled with the soggy papers. Charcoal instantly smeared across her hands, turning the rain pooling around them gray. Some pages were already hopelessly blurred, the ink running, the paper tearing as she tried to lift them. The wind snatched a particularly detailed charcoal portrait, sending it cartwheeling down the street before plastering it against the side of a passing bus.
Oh. I'm so sorry. The wind, they're getting ruined.
Voice gruff, distracted, snatching at a drifting page, damn storm. Damn city. Just, grab what you can, girl. If you insist.
Together, they scrambled, gathering the damp, smeared artwork. Ellie worked quickly, carefully stacking the less damaged pieces, shielding them with her body as best she could from the driving rain. Just as they seemed to be getting the upper hand, a yellow taxi, oblivious or uncaring, sped through a deep puddle near the curb. A tidal wave of gritty, brown water erupted, arcing directly towards them. Ellie reacted instinctively, turning slightly to shield the older man and the stack of sketches she held. The icy, dirty spray hit her full force across her back and side, soaking her suit jacket completely, the impact stealing her breath for a moment.
Looks up sharply, eyes narrowed under dripping gray eyebrows, you all right? That was quite a soaking. Fool driver.
Shivering slightly, forcing a smile, I'm okay. More worried about these. Is anything salvageable?
Grimly surveying the soggy pile, some. Maybe. Thanks to you. Most people wouldn't have bothered getting their fancy clothes dirty. Especially not for some old fool and his scribbles.
He began stuffing the rescued pages back into the battered portfolio, his movements efficient despite the weather. Ellie stood up, her legs stiff, pushing damp strands of hair from her face. And then she looked down at herself. The reality hit her with the force of the taxi's splash. Her charcoal suit was plastered with wet patches, darker streaks of indeterminate city grime, and clear smudges of charcoal dust, especially across the front where she'd held the papers. Her white blouse beneath was undoubtedly stained. Her hands were gray with charcoal residue. Her hair hung in limp, dripping tendrils. As she shifted her weight, she felt a sickening lurch, the strap of her inexpensive full-leather purse, weakened by the rain and her earlier frantic movements, snapped clean through. Her bag thumped onto the wet pavement.
Muffled groan, oh, no, my bag.
She bent to retrieve it, just as the older man finally secured the last buckle on his portfolio. He straightened up, giving her a long, appraising look, his blue eyes sharp beneath the dripping brim of an old tweed cap he'd produced from somewhere.
You seem to be having quite the morning, young lady. Got somewhere important to be, dressed like that? Before the flood, anyway.
Voice trembling slightly, trying to sound composed, yes, actually. An interview. At Sterling Publishing, just there.
She gestured vaguely towards the tower, acutely aware of the dripping mess she presented. She risked a glance at her watch. 15 minutes. 15 minutes until the interview that held the key to her future. Her heart plummeted. There was no time to go back, no time to change, no time to fix the broken strap or wipe away the grime or dry her hair. This was it. This ruined appearance, this faint smell of damp paper and charcoal clinging to her, this was how she would have to face them.
To Finch, forcing politeness through rising panic, I hope your artwork isn't too badly damaged. I really have to go. Good luck.
Nods slowly, eyes still holding hers. Luck finds those who make room for it, I suppose. You certainly made some room today. Now hurry along. Don't want to keep Sterling waiting.
Ellie didn't wait for another word. Clutching her own portfolio in one hand and her broken purse in the other, she turned and made a frantic, slightly lopsided dash towards the gleaming revolving doors of Sterling Tower, the rain still pouring down, each splash on the pavement echoing the frantic beat of her own heart. The sanctuary she had been anticipating now felt like the entrance to her own trial by fire. Pushing through the heavy glass of the revolving door, Ellie Vance stepped out of the drumming rain and into the hushed, climate-controlled sanctuary of the Sterling Publishing lobby. The transition was jarring. Outside, chaos and gray deluge; inside, an oasis of polished marble, abstract art bathed in soft spotlights, and the subtle, expensive scent of lilies mingling with old paper and power. And standing there, dripping onto the immaculate floor, was Ellie. Her reflection, distorted momentarily in the gleaming surface, showed a figure starkly out of place, damp hair escaping its clip, dark smudges of charcoal on her cheek and blouse, her suit clinging uncomfortably, the broken strap of her purse clutched awkwardly in her hand along with her precious portfolio. She was a watercolor painting left out in a downpour, bleeding at the edges in a gallery of crisp oil portraits. The vast space hummed with a quiet intensity. Staff glided past in expensive shoes, voices low, acknowledging each other with practiced nods. All motion seemed to pause for a fraction of a second as Ellie entered their orbit. Eyes flickered towards her, registered the incongruity, and then flickered away with practiced disinterest, though not before a few micro-expressions, a raised eyebrow here, a tightened lip there, betrayed their assessment. She approached the main reception desk, a formidable block of dark wood manned by a young woman with impossibly perfect hair and an air of cool detachment.
Voice quiet, trying to project calm despite her pounding heart, excuse me. My name is Eleanor Vance. I have a 10 o'clock interview appointment for the assistant editor trainee position.
The receptionist's gaze swept over Ellie, a slow, deliberate appraisal from dripping hair to stained shoes, lingering for a moment on the broken purse strap. Her smile was tight, professional, but held no warmth. Consulting screen, tone clipped, ah yes. Vance. The Diversity Initiative candidate. Floor 26. Elevators are to your right. Please wait in the designated reception area. The emphasis on diversity initiative felt less like information and more like classification, a subtle underlining of Ellie's otherness. Ellie murmured a thank you, the word barely audible, and turned towards the bank of elevators, keenly aware of the receptionist's eyes following her, aware of the sudden silence that seemed to have fallen over the immediate vicinity of the desk. The elevator arrived with a soft ping, its interior lined with polished mirrors, forcing Ellie into an inescapable confrontation with her reflection. The harsh fluorescent light was unforgiving. The charcoal smudges seemed darker, the water stains more pronounced. She tried futilely to tuck stray hairs back into place, wiped at a smudge on her cheek with a damp tissue pulled from her broken bag, smoothed down her jacket. It was hopeless.
Internal thought, a wave of nausea, oh God. Look at me. They're going to take one look. What was I thinking, stopping? But that poor man, his art. No time. Just breathe. Remember the words. Make the words count more than the suit. Please, let the words count.
The elevator doors slid open onto the 26th floor, revealing a waiting area designed to impress and intimidate. Plush, cream-colored carpets muffled every footstep. Leather armchairs were arranged in discreet groupings around low glass tables holding intimidatingly highbrow literary journals. Abstract sculptures occupied strategic corners, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking, panoramic views of the rain-streaked Manhattan skyline. Several other candidates were already seated, spaced comfortably apart. They were the picture of Ivy League poise, men in sharp suits, women in elegant sheath dresses, radiating an aura of effortless confidence and inherited privilege. They looked like they'd been born ready for this interview, perhaps even for the corner office down the hall. As Ellie stepped out of the elevator, a collective pause seemed to ripple through the room. All eyes turned towards her. There were audible intakes of breath, quickly stifled. A young man in a bow tie exchanged a smirk with a woman beside him. Two women seated near the window began whispering behind perfectly manicured hands, their voices carrying just enough in the quiet room. Did you see that? Dragged in by the storm? More like dragged herself out of somewhere else entirely. Honestly, the standards for this initiative, it's becoming embarrassing. Daddy will have words if they actually hire that. Ellie felt her cheeks flame again. She forced herself to keep her chin up, ignoring the stares, the palpable waves of judgment washing over her. She walked towards the smaller reception desk on this floor, her footsteps feeling unnaturally loud on the luxurious carpet. A different receptionist, older, slightly less icy but equally professional, checked her name off a list with a barely perceptible frown. Ms. Vance. Yes. Please take a seat over there. Ms. Cromwell and Mr. Davies will call you in shortly. The indicated seat was slightly apart from the main cluster of candidates, near a rather forlorn-looking potted plant, almost as if quarantined. Ellie sat, clutching her portfolio tightly, trying desperately to focus on her notes, but the whispers and the weight of scrutiny made it nearly impossible. The air crackled with elitism, a corporate culture defined by exclusion disguised as exclusivity. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 agonizing minutes, a sleek door opened down the hallway. Ms. Vance? They're ready for you now. Ellie stood up, her legs feeling like lead. As she took a step, the broken strap of her purse snagged momentarily on the chair, causing her to stumble slightly. A distinct, sharp snort came from the direction of the bow-tied young man. Swallowing hard against the lump in her throat, Ellie took a deep breath and walked towards the interview room door, each step an act of sheer will. She pushed it open. The room was large, minimalist, dominated by a long, dark table. Behind it sat 3 figures. In the center, Victoria Cromwell.
Impeccably dressed in a severe navy suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back tightly, sharp eyes already dissecting Ellie from head to toe. To her left, Julian Davies.
Leaning back slightly in his chair, a picture of languid condescension in a perfectly tailored pinstripe suit, a small, smug smile playing on his lips. And to Cromwell's right, Sarah Jenkins, younger, looking tense, her gaze fixed firmly on the papers arranged neatly before her.
Voice slightly breathless, higher than usual, good morning. Ms. Cromwell, Mr. Davies, Ms. Jenkins. I'm Eleanor Vance. Thank you for seeing me.
She tried to inject warmth and confidence into her voice, but it came out sounding thin, strained. She kept her back straight, meeting their gazes directly, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. Victoria Cromwell raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her expression unreadable but decidedly unimpressed. Julian Davies actually wrinkled his nose, leaning forward slightly as if catching an unpleasant scent.
Quietly, but clearly audible, to Cromwell, "Good Lord, Victoria. Is that damp? Or something else? Quite pungent."
Ellie froze, the comment hitting her like a physical blow. The smell. The dampness, the faint, acrid scent of charcoal dust and wet paper clinging to her clothes. Self-consciousness turned into burning shame.
Ignoring Davies, voice like chipped ice, Ms. Vance. Please sit. We have a rather full schedule.
Ellie walked woodenly to the chair indicated opposite them. As she sat, she felt a damp patch transfer from her suit to the expensive leather upholstery. She saw Sarah Jenkins shift uncomfortably, her eyes darting towards the damp spot and then quickly back to her papers.
Now, Ms. Vance. Sterling Publishing prides itself on certain standards. Presentation, professionalism, these are not optional extras. They are fundamental. You understand the importance of a first impression in this industry, I presume?
Throat tight, yes. Yes, of course, Ms. Cromwell. I understand completely. I apologize for my current state. There was an unexpected incident on my way here this morning.
Eyes narrow, an incident?
Leaning forward, feigning interest, "Do tell. Did you perhaps encounter some unforeseen, practical experience outside the hallowed halls of, where was it? Ah yes, community college?"
Takes a breath, keeping her voice level. It was raining quite heavily. There was an older gentleman, an artist it seemed, who dropped his portfolio. His sketches went everywhere on the wet pavement. I stopped to help him gather them. Unfortunately, in the process, well, a taxi drove through a puddle, and
Cutting her off with a dismissive wave of her hand, a truly touching anecdote, Ms. Vance. Admirable, in a quaint sort of way. However, this is Sterling Publishing, not a charitable organization. We are looking for individuals who demonstrate sound judgment, impeccable time management, and an understanding of professional decorum. Prioritizing a stranger's soggy artwork over a critical career opportunity doesn't exactly scream executive potential, does it?
Indeed. One might even suggest it shows a certain lack of intellectual rigor. A difficulty in prioritizing tasks effectively, perhaps? Something one might expect from a background less accustomed to the demands of a high-pressure corporate culture like ours.
hands trembling slightly now, but voice firming with indignation, with respect, Mr. Davies, I believe helping someone in distress is sound judgment. And demonstrating empathy, even under pressure, surely isn't a detriment in an industry built on understanding human stories? I made a choice. I stand by it. It doesn't negate my passion for literature or my ability to do this job.
A glacial smile touches her lips. Passion is all well and good, Ms. Vance. But passion doesn't edit manuscripts or negotiate contracts. Now, your application notes your mother. Maria Vance is employed on our facilities staff?
Ellie's stomach plummeted. The way Cromwell said facilities staff dripped with condescension, drawing an invisible but stark line between Ellie and the world she dared to enter.
Ah, yes. Explains the entree, perhaps? One does wonder about the selection process for this initiative. Connections are everything, of course, even backdoor ones.
Standing straighter, voice shaking almost imperceptibly, my mother's work ethic is something I deeply admire, but my application stands entirely on its own merits. I earned this interview based on my qualifications and the requirements set forth by Sterling itself.
Glances pointedly at the clock on the wall. Quite. Well, Ms. Vance, I think we have all the information we require. Thank you for your time. We will be in touch regarding our decision. Sarah, could you show Ms. Vance out?
Just like that. It was over. 15 minutes, perhaps less. Ellie knew, instinctively, that the other candidates would be granted at least double that time. The dismissal was brutal, absolute. She stood up, her legs unsteady, the earlier numbness replaced by a dull ache of profound disappointment and simmering anger. She managed a tight nod, unable to trust her voice for a proper farewell. As she turned to leave, following a pale and silent Sarah Jenkins towards the door, Julian Davies offered a parting shot, his voice smooth as poisoned silk.
Do give our regards to your mother, Miss Vance. Perhaps suggest she stick to polishing the floors. Some roles are simply a better fit, wouldn't you agree?
The final insult landed squarely between her shoulder blades. Ellie didn't look back. Head held high, ignoring the renewed whispers from the waiting room as she walked past, she followed Sarah Jenkins back to the elevator, the opulent surroundings now feeling like the bars of a gilded cage, designed to keep people like her firmly on the outside. The heavy door slid shut, sealing her fate, leaving her alone once more with her disastrous reflection and the crushing weight of prejudice. The mirrored elevator doors slid shut, trapping Ellie Vance in the suffocating silence, her own reflection a cruel mockery of the hopeful woman who had entered Sterling Tower less than an hour ago. Down in the lobby, she moved like a ghost, barely registering the opulent surroundings that now felt like a hostile fortress. The earlier judgment in the eyes of the staff seemed to confirm her deepest fear: she didn't belong. Out on the street, the rain had thankfully stopped, leaving behind glistening pavements and the metallic scent of washed concrete. But the clouds in Ellie's heart remained dark, heavy, threatening their own downpour. She found a deserted bench in a small, nearby plaza, tucked away from the main flow of pedestrians, and finally let the tears come, hot tears of humiliation, frustration, and shattered dreams. It felt like the end of something vital.
Internal thought, choked whisper, it's over. All that work, all that hope, for what? To be laughed at? To be told I smell? That mom should stick to, oh, God. They didn't even care about the books, about the ideas, just the suit, the school, the smell.
The official rejection email arrived the next day. It was brief, polite, utterly impersonal, confirming what she already knew. The finality of it sent her into a spiral of dejection. For 2 days, she barely left her apartment, the memory of Victoria Cromwell's icy dismissal and Julian Davies' sneering remarks playing on a loop in her mind. The world outside her window seemed too bright, too busy, too full of people who presumably weren't covered in metaphorical mud and charcoal dust. Her mother, Maria, tried her best, offering quiet comfort and plates of food Ellie barely touched.
Voice soft, concerned, Ellie, Mija, you need to eat something. It was just one interview. There will be others. You are too smart, too good, to let this stop you.
Voice flat, listless, I know, Mom. I'm just tired.
Maria Vance knew her daughter well enough to sense the depth of the hurt went beyond simple disappointment, but Ellie couldn't bring herself to recount the specific, soul-crushing details of the humiliation, especially the comments about her mother's job. How could she add that burden to her mother's already weary shoulders? On the 3rd day, realizing that hiding wouldn't heal the wound, Ellie forced herself out of bed. She needed air, space, something green. She grabbed her worn sketchbook, a constant companion, a place where judgment didn't exist, and headed towards the sprawling sanctuary of Central Park. She found a relatively quiet bench near the lake, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the water, dappling the path through the leaves. The simple act of sketching, the familiar scrape of pencil on paper, the focus required to capture the curve of a branch or the ripple on the water, began to soothe the raw edges of her dejection. She wasn't thinking about publishing, about interviews, about failure. She was just drawing, losing herself in lines and shades, trying to reconnect with the passion that had driven her in the first place. She was so absorbed, she didn't immediately notice the figure approaching her bench until polished leather shoes stopped directly in her line of sight. Ellie looked up, startled, ready to politely wave off a potential interruption. But her breath caught in her throat. Standing before her was the man from the rainstorm. The street artist. Except, he wasn't. The scruffy, paint-splattered clothes were gone, replaced by an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that whispered quiet, old-world expense. The gray beard was neatly trimmed, the intense blue eyes were the same, but now they held an unnerving clarity and a hint of wry amusement. He looked distinguished, powerful, utterly transformed. Ellie stared, mouth slightly open, confusion warring with a dawning, impossible sense of recognition.
Stammering slightly, you're the man, from the other day? With the sketches? Are you all right? Your artwork.
Voice smooth, cultured, entirely different from the gruffness she remembered. The artwork is recovering, thank you. Much like its owner. Though I dare say you fared rather worse that morning. May I?
He gestured towards the empty space on the bench beside her. Ellie nodded numbly, still trying to reconcile the man before her with the disheveled artist from the rainstorm. He sat down, not too close, placing a sleek, slender briefcase beside him.
I don't understand. You look so different.
Appearances can be deceiving, Ms. Vance. A lesson some people learn too late. Or perhaps, never at all. My apologies for the earlier deception. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Alistair Finch.
He extended a hand. Ellie automatically reached out, her fingers still slightly smudged with graphite from her sketchbook. His grip was firm, dry. The name echoed in her mind, Alistair Finch. The Alistair Finch? The reclusive, almost mythical founder and chairman of Sterling Publishing? It couldn't be. This had to be some elaborate, cruel joke.
Withdrawing her hand quickly, voice barely a whisper, Alistair Finch? The chairman of Sterling Publishing? But you were the artist.
A faint smile touches his lips, an eccentric habit, I confess. I find walking the city incognito illuminating. It allows one to observe things one might otherwise miss from the rarefied air of the 30th floor. How people treat each other when they think no one of consequence is watching, for instance. Like how a young woman, on her way to the most important interview of her life, doesn't hesitate to ruin her suit to help a complete stranger save his waterlogged sketches in a downpour.
Ellie stared at him, speechless, her mind reeling. The rainstorm. The dropped portfolio. It wasn't just random misfortune. It was a test.
Your act of kindness that day, Ms. Vance, showed remarkable integrity. Character. Something far more valuable, and frankly, far rarer in my line of work than an Ivy League degree or a perfectly polished resume. I retrieved my portfolio, by the way. Even damp, the talent in those sketches I saw you holding, remarkable. You have a good eye, not just a good heart.
Finding her voice, still thick with disbelief, but the interview. Ms. Cromwell and Mr. Davies, they.
His expression hardens, the amusement vanishing, ah yes. Ms. Cromwell and Mr. Davies. I am, fully apprised of the situation in that interview room, Ms. Vance. Sterling has rather comprehensive security measures. And sometimes employees with a conscience feel compelled to report appalling lapses in judgment and basic human decency when they witness them.
His words hung in the air. He knew. He knew about the insults, the dismissal, the remarks about her mother. The shame Ellie had felt began to morph into a different kind of heat, righteous anger.
What you experienced was not representative of the values upon which I built this publishing house, Ms. Vance. It was a display of snobbery, prejudice, and frankly, profound stupidity. Judging talent based on the cost of a suit or the name of a university. Insulting an applicant's family. Dismissing genuine compassion as quaint. Unacceptable. They mistook Sterling's legacy for their own petty elitism.
I don't know what to say.
You don't need to say anything. Their behavior has been addressed. What I want to talk about is you. That assistant editor trainee position you interviewed for. Forget it. It's beneath you.
Ellie's fragile hope, just beginning to flicker, threatened to extinguish again. He thought she wasn't even good enough for the trainee role?
No, Ms. Vance. What I have in mind is something different. Sterling is, or should be, about finding and nurturing vital new voices. Voices that reflect the real world, not just the inside of a privileged echo chamber. I need someone with integrity, with passion, with a keen eye, and with the courage to champion stories that matter, regardless of pedigree. Someone who understands what it means to be overlooked. I'm creating a new role. A special projects editor, reporting directly to me. Focused on discovering and developing underrepresented talent. It will be challenging. It will likely annoy Ms. Cromwell immensely. But I believe you are precisely the right person to lead it.
Ellie stared at him, the words hitting her like waves. Special projects editor? Reporting to him? It was unthinkable. A job offer born not from an interview, but from an act of kindness in a rainstorm.
Me? But, Mr. Finch, I don't have the experience. I only went to community college. I've never worked in publishing before. How can I possibly?
Cutting her off gently but firmly, Eleanor. May I call you Eleanor? What you have is far more important than what you lack in conventional credentials. You have demonstrable integrity. You have passion, I see it in your sketches, I heard it even in the few moments you were allowed to speak in that travesty of an interview. You have resilience. You didn't let them break you, even when they were abominably cruel. Those qualities cannot be taught. They cannot be bought. Experience can be gained. Knowledge can be acquired. Character is innate. Sterling needs your character, Eleanor. Perhaps more than it knows.
Tears welled in Ellie's eyes again, blurring the image of the powerful man sitting beside her, the man who had seen past the stained suit and the modest background to something deeper. This time, the tears weren't of humiliation, but of overwhelming, unbelievable relief and a dawning, fragile hope.
Voice thick with emotion, I accept, Mr. Finch. Thank you. I won't let you down.
Nods, a genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. I have absolutely no doubt about that, Eleanor. Now. Be at my office, floor 30, tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. We have a great deal of work to do, and some internal restructuring to finalize.
Alistair Finch stood, picked up his briefcase, gave Ellie one last nod, and walked away, melting into the flow of people enjoying the late afternoon sun in Central Park. Ellie remained on the bench, clutching her sketchbook, the weight of his business card, retrieved silently from his briefcase and pressed into her hand before he left, feeling impossibly heavy. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, sunlight sparkling on the lake like scattered diamonds, illuminating a future she hadn't dared to dream of just hours before. Tomorrow, she would walk back into Sterling Tower, not as a hopeful applicant, but as something entirely new. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. The following morning dawned bright and clear, the city scrubbed clean by the previous day's storm. For Eleanor Vance, however, the internal forecast was still turbulent. Armed with Alistair Finch's business card and a maelstrom of disbelief, excitement, and trepidation, she made her way back to Sterling Tower. This time, the journey felt different. The imposing facade seemed less like a fortress and more like possibility. Instead of approaching the main reception, she presented Mr. Finch's card to a discreet security desk tucked away in a corner she hadn't noticed before. Recognition dawned instantly in the guard's eyes, replaced by professional deference. A quiet call was made, and within moments, a composed assistant appeared, greeting her not as an applicant, but as an expected guest. Ellie was escorted to a dedicated elevator, bypassing the main lobby and ascending directly to the 30th floor, the executive level. The doors opened onto a space even more rarefied than the waiting room she'd endured before. Thick carpets, original artwork, hushed voices, and the scent of lemon oil and old leather. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a mix of awe and the lingering phantom limb of yesterday's humiliation. Finch's assistant led her down a quiet corridor to a large conference room. Inside, seated around a vast, gleaming table, were Victoria Cromwell, Julian Davies, and Sarah Jenkins. They looked up as Ellie entered behind the assistant, their expressions shifting rapidly from polite expectation to confusion, then dawning shock as Alistair Finch himself rose from the head of the table.
Ah, Eleanor. Right on time. Please, join us. Marcella, thank you, that will be all for now.
Finch gestured towards an empty chair beside him. Cromwell and Davies stared, momentarily speechless, their eyes flicking between Finch and Ellie, trying to process her presence in this executive sanctum. Sarah Jenkins looked down at the table, her knuckles white where she gripped her pen. The air crackled with unspoken questions and thick tension.
Voice calm, measured, thank you all for coming on short notice. I've convened this meeting to introduce Sterling's newest appointment. This is Eleanor Vance. As of today, she will be taking on the newly created role of Special Projects Editor, focusing on identifying and developing new literary voices. She will be reporting directly to me.
The silence that followed was profound, broken only by a sharp intake of breath from Victoria Cromwell. Julian Davies's smug expression had vanished, replaced by pale disbelief.
Voice tight, struggling for composure, Alistair. Mr. Finch, with all due respect, are you quite serious? This young woman, she interviewed for the trainee position only yesterday. An interview which, I must add, did not meet Sterling's established standards. There were significant issues with suitability, presentation, basic decorum.
Nodding quickly, finding his voice, perhaps trying to align himself with Finch, yes, Alistair, Victoria's right. While admirable, in some respects, her background perhaps requires more seasoning. The trainee program is designed for precisely that. This seems rather abrupt. We barely had time to assess her potential within the established framework.
Leans forward slightly, his gaze sharp, pinning first Cromwell, then Davies, established standards. Established framework. Let's talk about standards, shall we, Victoria? Whose standards? Yours? Or Sterling's? Because my understanding is that Sterling's standards include basic human decency, respect, and the ability to recognize talent even when it isn't packaged in a $5,000 suit or delivered with an Ivy League accent. My standards certainly don't include mocking an applicant's appearance, dismissing genuine empathy as quaint, or making derogatory remarks about her family's employment.
Cromwell flushed a dull red. Davies shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Finch's gaze. Sarah Jenkins seemed to shrink further into her chair.
Alistair, I assure you, there must be some misunderstanding. We were merely assessing her fit within the demanding corporate culture, ensuring she possessed the necessary polish.
Cutting her off, voice dangerously soft, Polish. Is that what you call prejudice, Victoria? Is lack of rigor the new euphemism for classism, Julian? I founded this publishing house on the principle of finding powerful stories, wherever they come from. On valuing substance over superficiality. You seem to have forgotten that. You judged Ms. Vance on everything except what truly matters, her intelligence, her passion for literature, which, had you bothered to truly listen, is profound, and her innate integrity. Qualities you both demonstrated a shocking lack of.
He let the silence hang for a moment, his disappointment palpable. Ellie sat straighter, meeting his gaze briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them.
Your actions during that interview were not just unprofessional, they were a betrayal of everything Sterling should stand for. Therefore, effective immediately, you will both be reassigned. Victoria, you will oversee the digitization and management of the backlist archive in the sub-basement. Julian, you will be responsible for processing manuscript returns and slush pile categorization. Perhaps some time away from the front lines, dealing with the fundamental nuts and bolts, will remind you of the respect due to every part of this process, and every person involved in it.
Voice trembling with outrage. The archives? Alistair, that's preposterous. I am a senior editor.
Processing returns? But my acquisitions, my authors.
Voice hardening, your authors will be reassigned. Should these new duties prove unsuitable, you are, of course, free to tender your resignations. Sarah.
Sarah Jenkins jumped as Finch addressed her directly.
Voice small, yes, Mr. Finch?
You will provide Ms. Vance with whatever operational support she requires as she transitions into her new role. Brief her on current systems, facilitate introductions. Is that clear?
Nodding quickly, yes, sir. Perfectly clear.
Good. Eleanor, welcome officially to Sterling. I trust this clarifies your position. This meeting is adjourned.
Finch stood, a clear dismissal. Cromwell and Davies remained seated for a moment, stunned into silence, their faces masks of shock and fury. Ellie rose with Finch, offering him a brief, grateful nod. She carefully avoided looking directly at Cromwell or Davies, but she caught Sarah Jenkins' eye for a fleeting second. Sarah quickly looked away, but not before Ellie saw a complex mix of relief and apprehension there. Later that day, Ellie found herself standing in what was now her office. It wasn't large or grand like the corner suites, but it had a window with a view of the city skyline, a solid desk, and blessed quiet. The reality was slowly sinking in. The confrontation had been swift, brutal, and decisive. Accountability had been served, cold and direct. Now came the hard part, proving worth. The initial days were a whirlwind. Learning the complex systems of a major publishing house, navigating the intricate workplace dynamics, feeling the weight of expectation, both Finch's and her own. There were whispers, of course. Sideways glances in the hallways. A mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and perhaps resentment from some colleagues who saw her sudden elevation as unearned, suspect. One afternoon, while trying to decipher the arcane manuscript submission database, she heard a hesitant knock. It was Sarah Jenkins, holding 2 mugs of coffee.
Awkwardly, hi, Eleanor. I thought you might need this. It's a lot to take in, I know. The database is quirky. Surprised, offers a small smile, Sarah. Thank you, that's really kind. Quirky is one word for it. I was just about ready to declare war on subclause 7B. A flicker of a genuine smile, tell me about it. Look, about the interview. I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. It wasn't right. What they said. Meeting her gaze steadily, thank you for saying that, Sarah. It means a lot. Let's just focus on the work now, shall we? I could actually use your help understanding this query protocol. Oh. Right. Yes, of course. Let me show you.
It was a small moment, a tentative bridge built across the wreckage of the previous week. Ellie knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. She had to earn the respect of her colleagues, navigate the inevitable challenges, and deliver on the extraordinary faith Alistair Finch had placed in her. But as she looked out her office window at the sprawling city below, a city that had tested her and, against all odds, offered redemption, she felt a quiet determination settle within her. She picked up a simple, beautifully rendered charcoal sketch, one of the few salvageable pieces the old artist had pressed into her hand after the rainstorm, which she now kept pinned above her desk. It was time to turn the page, time to start proving that kindness, integrity, and a true passion for stories were the most valuable assets of all in the demanding world of Sterling publishing. The real work was just beginning. The months following Eleanor Vance's turbulent entry into Sterling Publishing unfolded with a mixture of steep learning curves and quiet triumphs. The initial whispers and skepticism gradually faded, replaced by a grudging respect as Ellie poured her heart and considerable intellect into her role as special projects editor. Guided by Alastair Finch's mentorship and fueled by her own unwavering passion, she began the painstaking work of seeking out the voices that traditional publishing gatekeepers, like Cromwell and Davies, had so often overlooked. It wasn't easy. There were long hours, challenging negotiations, and moments of self-doubt, but Ellie's commitment never wavered. Slowly but surely, the imprint under her guidance began to make waves. First came a slim volume of poetry from a young immigrant writer that garnered unexpected critical acclaim. Then, a gritty debut novel discovered in the slush pile, championed by Ellie, found its way onto bestseller lists, its raw honesty resonating with readers hungry for authentic stories. Sterling, once seen as staid and predictable, started earning buzz for its fresh perspectives, its renewed commitment to diversity in publishing making headlines in literary journals. Ellie's success wasn't just personal, it was having a tangible impact, subtly shifting the cultural landscape within the venerable publishing house. At a packed launch party for her imprint's latest discovery, held in a trendy downtown gallery, Ellie moved through the celebratory crowd with a newfound, quiet confidence. She shared a proud smile with her beaming debut author before Alastair Finch appeared at her elbow.
Voice laced with satisfaction, quite the turnout, Eleanor. You seem to have struck a chord. See? Told you character counts for more than connections. Sterling needed this shake-up. Needed you.
Smiling warmly, we needed these authors, Mr. Finch. I just helped clear the path a little. Thank you for giving me the chance to do that.
As for Victoria Cromwell and Julian Davies? Cromwell, apparently, found managing the backlist archive beneath her dignity and resigned within weeks, disappearing into early retirement or perhaps another less prominent role elsewhere. Davies, stripped of his power base, remained in the returns department, a pale shadow of his former smug self, a cautionary tale whispered among junior staff about the perils of unchecked elitism. Accountability, it turned out, had sharp teeth even within Sterling's gilded cage. One crisp autumn weekend, Ellie treated her mother, Maria, to a luxurious spa day followed by dinner at an elegant restaurant overlooking the city lights, something they could only have dreamed of just a year prior.
Eyes shining, holding Ellie's hand across the table, Mija, look at this place. Look at you. So strong, so successful. Doing work you love. It's more than I ever hoped for you. All those years, worrying, it was worth it just to see you like this.
Voice thick with emotion, it's thanks to you, Mom. Everything you sacrificed, everything you taught me about working hard, about being kind even when it's difficult, that's what got me here. That's the true value. Not the fancy title or the view from the office. It's knowing you did the right thing, even when no one important was supposed to be watching.
Later, looking out from her own office window, the charcoal sketch pinned above her desk serving as a constant reminder, Ellie reflected on the improbable journey. The rainstorm, the ruined suit, the interview that felt like an ending but was merely a brutal, necessary prelude to a new beginning. True worth, she knew now with unshakable certainty, wasn't measured by credentials or appearances, but by the integrity of one's character, the willingness to connect, the courage to act on empathy. Alastair Finch had given her an opportunity, but it was her own choices, her own inherent nature, that had ultimately authored this chapter of her story. And so, a simple act of kindness on a rain-soaked Manhattan street didn't just change one young woman's life. It sent ripples through a powerful institution, challenging long-held prejudices and beginning a slow, essential cultural change. It served as a potent reminder that hope often resides in unexpected places, that integrity carries its own quiet authority, and that the most compelling stories sometimes belong to the voices we haven't yet learned to listen for. True value, like genuine talent, can emerge from anywhere, demanding only that we have the wisdom and the heart to recognize it when it appears.